Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of Rose Guns Days as Season 3, still. I hope the last episode made sense, because I had to record that in many parts. And if I haven't edited it yet, I don't know what the result is. I'm sure I'll figure it out, like, tomorrow. But yeah, in case you couldn't really follow what was going on, why don't we just roll right through into the summary, as we always do. Yeah, we'll do summary first and then content warning this time. Just switch it up a little bit. So what happened last time was Butler's superior officer, Major Gabriel, I assume that's his last name. I already forgot if we were told a first name. No, it's definitely his last name. He was just sort of sitting there, chilling in Butler's office, checking out his wine and his music, and he is a pretentious guy. Just metaphor after metaphor, and it's all about wine and fancy stuff. It's just, yeah, weird man. But to Butler, he explains that he's here to tackle the corruption that Butler himself is knee-deep in, which is a challenge because Butler has basically gotten blackmail material for everyone who supported him or looked the other way. And, that makes tackling the corruption a bit more difficult because that would mean dismantling the whole organization. Whoops. So, what Gabriel is planning on doing about that isn't really clear, but we do know that he's putting Butler under observation. He does word it far more creepily than I just did, but he's under observation. So that's bad news for Butler. Around this time, Alan and Keith are camping on the rooftop to try and get a shot at Davis, who is interfering with Primavera's plans. They're goofing off late at night when Davis actually shows up with a bunch of hired bodyguards. They get ready because, that's their job. However, the wandering dogs themselves suddenly interrupt by crashing a car on the scene, of all things. A clear sign to Keith and Alan that the hit's been called off. Something happened, which means that they need to not actually carry it out right now. The reason is that crazy Alfred, of all people, has taken Davis under his protection. Which might not seem like the biggest deal, but crazy Alfred's been working hard while we haven't been seeing him. He's been gathering all the criminals that are too unhinged to sign up with Primavera. He's robbing banks, making big money, so he now has money and people to order around. Basically a fair amount of power. So the leaders convene for a change of plans. They're going to try to convince Alfred to back off using money. And since the hit is off, Alan schedules a date with Yuki, also known as Meishue, Meiji's little sister. On the date, she's followed by some of Meiji's men, who are scoping out whether Alan's a decent guy or not, and who he is in the first place. She makes them back off, but Alan runs his mouth and starts claiming things like all Chinese people in City 23 can't be trusted. And that's where we left off. Will he get dumped? Yes. My money's on yes. And does he deserve it? Absolutely. And, with that, all that is left is our content warning. Content warning for Rose Guns Days, this season in particular. But we haven't had to make any changes, so, we should be good. But if that is not the case, I will cut in an extra warning at the end of the content warning to inform you of any other additional warnings that are necessary. You just get the full list. Alright, so content warning for today's episode: violence, gun violence, racism, sexual content, including mentions of assault, misogyny, alcohol abuse, mental health issues like trauma and depression, and mentions of human trafficking. Now, that doesn't mean that all of that's going to happen in this episode, but it means that it could. Again, if more specific warnings are needed, I will cut them in for right now. There's a brief, not very descriptive, but still kind of intense mention of self-harm in this episode. Check the description for timestamps so that you know when it happens. You can also use those to skip the specific scene. It's very short, it's only one sentence, but use the timestamps if you feel like you need to. We're good to go. And go we shall. Oh no, I can see the date that it's been a while. That is a lot longer ago than I thought it was. I've been very busy, sadly. Yep, there he is, putting his foot in it. Oh boy, and he's doubling down. This does not bode well for these two. Well, I'm not saying that all the Chinese are villains, but it's still safer to assume they are. To assume they are when you're living around here. Oh wow, okay, if I just continued by like a sentence, it would have been done last time. Okay. Oh? I thought we were maybe like switching a focal point away from the date, but no. Even though Mei Shui had been looking forward to this date so much, the food didn't seem delicious today. Alan's casually spoken views of the Chinese had driven an insurmountable wedge between the two of them. When I first met Alan, I spoke in fluent Japanese, so he naturally believed I was Japanese. I might have confessed to being Chinese right then and there, but I wanted to see his amiable smile a bit longer, so unfortunately, I lied. Mei Shui was no fool. She knew of the Chinese-Japanese relationship as members of winning and losing countries. If she announced that she was Chinese, I would almost certainly estrange him. She might never get to see him again, which honestly feels preferable to whatever you're doing right now, Yugi. Or that's not even your real name, sorry. Mei Shui. Thinking that, she had lied, saying she was a girl who just returned from a long period of study overseas, and therefore ignorant about Japan. Of course, she hadn't planned on fooling him forever. She had intended to confess her nationality someday. In that case, you can't let it get you down, Li Mei Shui. You have to straighten out his misconceptions and prejudices against the Chinese. Even I half believed that the Japanese were all chonmage until I studied overseas. What does that mean? Girl, you need to either confess or ditch. There's no middle ground here, I don't think. You can't be like, oh, I'll fix his prejudice first and then... It's not gonna work. Also, you can still be bothered by him being a jackass. That's still okay, even if you lied. The Chinese? Oh, lots of them are pretty fun guys, you know. When you're drunk, it doesn't matter if you're Japanese or Chinese. Then, what about when you're sober? Do you think we can get along well with the Chinese? I doubt it. You know they hate us, right? There was a war, after all. Both sides hated each other, right? After all, we fought it out in China, but they never got to fight it out in Japan. To the Chinese, it probably feels like they just got beat up one-sidedly, but never had a chance to pay Japan back. On the inside, the Japanese of this period probably felt that both parties bore responsibility. And the Japanese should be given a break, since that's how war worked. After all, the damage caused across Japan by the Great Disaster was no more or less than what China had suffered. However, that had only been a natural disaster. It wasn't a counterattack by the Chinese military. In truth, the Chinese of that period weren't completely satisfied. After all, the Japanese military had attacked the Chinese mainland. The Chinese military had only been resisting that invasion, and when they were finally ready to strike back, the Great Disaster broke out in Japan, which surrendered all on its own. In other words, Japan had punched China all on its own, and as soon as China tried to fight back, Japan slipped, fell, broke its leg, and then decided for themselves that it was time to make up. There were many among the city folk of Chinese descent who weren't satisfied with the humanitarian ceasefire caused by the Great Disaster. Yuki-chan, I know you aren't a fan of violence, but do you know the difference between fighting as a form of communication and simple violence? Violence is a form of communication? That's not a concept I'm familiar with. If you punch someone in the back all on your own, then keep punching them until they crumple. That's simple violence. That's not a fight. That's a barbarous assault, the worst sort of crap. But those fight festivals where drunks scuffle with each other playfully were different. Do you know why? Because you get hit just as often as they hit you. No matter how hard they smack you down, you've already punched them several times. That's why you can feel equal when it's all over. Alan's fights were always like that. He would punch and go wild. However, he'd been hit just as many times. He subconsciously gauged the difference in strength between him and his opponent, and naturally balanced it out. So, the people Alan fought with always truly felt that they were fighting on even terms, and they couldn't bring themselves to hate him. I see. If you were just getting hit one-sidedly, you would never feel that way. Berlin was laid waste by the Allied forces, right? I think that's why the French were put at ease a bit. But the Chinese never fired a bullet back at Tokyo. Of course they aren't satisfied. Street fights and wars are the same in that way. When you hit and get hit, and both sides are damaged equally, it becomes possible to rub your bruises and laugh together afterward. However, that never happened in the war between us and the Chinese. It's one way of looking at it? Question mark? Sure, Alan, why not? That's right. The Chinese had nowhere to direct the pain, anger, and sadness they had felt during the war, because the war was over. So, the fist they had raised in anger and sadness was still hanging there in the air. Revenge against the hated enemy which laid waste to their homeland. that feeling had been put on hold all this time. The way I see it, that great disaster will leave a wound for 100 years, one that can't be repaired with concrete. I'm sure that war should have been fought to the very end. I don't think you know how war works. I don't. Like, I get what you're saying. I don't think that would have fixed anything at all, though. Also, what you're basically arguing is that they should get to fire some rockets or fire some bullets, you know, as a treat. Which, no? Why would that be? I don't think that would fix anything, but alright. Moving on. If the Chinese and American militaries had landed on the Japanese mainland with all guns blazing, ready to take their revenge, then maybe they would finally be satisfied and feel as though both sides were on an even footing, Ellen muttered. Of course, this was all just the irresponsible view of a drunk. True. If the world Alan envisioned did exist, that probably wouldn't have healed the anger and sadness of the Chinese, nor the Japanese. In war, there is no ideal if. At the very moment it breaks out, it's already a tragedy that can never be taken back. The Japanese feel that both parties bear responsibility and the war is already over, so they feel no resentment, even though they lost. Also, I don't think that's true even, because we've seen a lot of resentment over the past seasons. I want to study this man's brain. He is weird. I guess it's not the right... No, that is the right term. I think it's safe. I think I can safely say that he's a weird dude. Sorry, I keep interrupting myself. I guess I'm allowed since it's me that I'm interrupting. But to the Chinese, the Japanese surrendered on their own terms, and they never got to punch back. The anger in their guts hasn't subsided. I'll bet that difference in tone between the two countries gets more and more twisted over the next 100 years, turning into something disastrous. Meishui was surprised by Alan's cool analysis. He had calmly understood at least some of the feelings she had thought a Japanese man would never understand. Well, now's your time to confess, if any. All of the Chinese felt some remaining sadness and anger towards the Japanese because of the war. The war was over. It wasn't permitted for them to resolve this problem through violent means. They wanted to take revenge by other means, but no matter how hard they tried, it could never compare to the losses suffered in that gruesome war. She knew full well that this was a negative emotion, not a cultural problem. However, there's no energy as simple as anger. It releases exactly as much energy as it receives. That anger would never go away unless they, by their own hands, reduced Tokyo to a pile of rubble like I don't know how to pronounce it. Is it Chongqing then? No, because the Q's, we're just gonna move on. And since they couldn't do this, their anger would never go away. Of course, they also understood that doing such a thing wouldn't heal anyone. If the Japanese have trouble understanding their anger, they should think of it this way. Let's say the Chinese military attacked Japan, reducing all of it to rubble. Then, when the Japanese military resisted and was about to strike back, a major disaster strikes China. the Japanese government accepts an unconditional ceasefire on humanitarian grounds. If the Chinese then said, "Hey, war's over, so let's all get along," would the Japanese be able to accept it? We paid reparations, so forgive our indiscriminate massive air raids of Tokyo, okay? Man, those Japanese guys sure complain about that old war a lot, even after taking our money. If they demanded that they be forgiven for trampling on Japan's human rights, it'd be hard to do. It's hard to forgive. The Japanese in the ruins of Tokyo would probably shed frustrated tears, wanting to make Beijing meet the same fate. In the end, unless they could have equal revenge against their enemies, it would never stop eating at them. At the moment, China and its countrymen were enjoying the feeling of being a victor nation, so their anger towards Japan had subsided somewhat. The Japanese were curled up as members of a defeated nation, and as long as they stayed down, the Chinese could probably keep their anger tucked away in their hearts. However, the Japanese felt that both parties had received their due punishment. Japan had been damaged no less than China, and they had paid reparations, so they felt all debts had been settled. Some even felt that, since infrastructure had been built under Japanese rule on China, the Chinese should even be grateful. 100 years from now, Japan would surely try to erase the memory of the war, calling it focusing on the future or something, proclaim that they'd left behind their status as a defeated nation. When that happened, the Chinese people of the future probably wouldn't accept it. After all, they had been able to postpone their anger at the Japanese because the latter was still hanging its head as a defeated nation. Mei Shui was vaguely starting to realize something. This was a fatal difference in culture between China and Japan. The concept of apology had a fatally different value to the two nations. To the Japanese, an apology is something you accept when you receive it. Of course, it isn't easy to accept it while you're still pissed off at someone. However, accepting it anyway and giving forgiveness is thought of as an action that shows off your tolerance. On the other hand, if you keep refusing an apology, you'll be thought of as immature, and people will look down on you even if you're the one being apologized to. Also, if you do accept the apology, then the crime is totally forgotten. And it's supposed to be unmanly and shameful if you ever bring it up again. However, this is only how the Japanese think, of course. The Chinese think differently. In China, an apology is something carried out when one claims to have been reborn as a new human, one who won't commit the same sin again. Only when it's acknowledged that you've been reborn will the crime of your previous life be forgiven. Therefore, if the criminal forgets his regret and returns to how he was before his rebirth, that pardon will naturally be rescinded, and the criminal will go back to being treated like a criminal. So, the Chinese would continuously check whether Japan still remained reborn as a new country, repentant of its war sins. However, to the Japanese, the 1978 Sino-Japanese Friendship Treaty meant that China had accepted Japan's apology. So, according to Japanese culture, China was acting dishonorably whenever it brought up a sin it had once forgiven. China, following Chinese culture, decided that its forgiveness of Japan should be rescinded, since the latter had forgotten its regret and was trying to return to a pre-war state. And the biggest tragedy is that neither side understands this difference between their cultures. To a Westerner, It's hard to imagine that there can be such a difference in values between these two neighboring countries, who even write with the same characters. But please understand one thing. Westerners aren't the only ones. Or aren't the only ones, I guess. How can we ever... how can we ever reach a mutual understanding with the Chinese? It's impossible, isn't it? It came so quick that Manchuria was ticked off. Alan, realizing he had misspoken, grimaced and hurriedly tried to smooth things over. You're so getting dumped, my guy. But you know what? In this world, there's all kinds of people that you just can't get along with. Instead of worrying about not getting friendly with people like that, it's a better use of your time to search for a new friend instead. He's so getting dumped. But in reality, Tokyo is currently filled with many Chinese and Japanese people, living side by side. It'd be one thing if there was an ocean separating them, but since we're living in the same city, can we really ignore the problem like that? I don't think we can. I believe we can understand each other, as neighbors living in the same city. Looks like that overseas education isn't anything to sneeze at. I really think what you're saying is wonderful. So, do you know about the porcupine dilemma, or whatever that was called? Hedgehog dilemma? It can be either, I guess. The porcupine dilemma? I'm surprised you've heard of such a thing. I could have sworn it was a hedgehog, but... When two porcupines tried to huddle together, they injure each other with the quills all over their body. They want to be close to their neighbors, but if they get too close, they'll end up hurting each other. In the end, even though they acknowledge each other as neighbors, it's desirable for them to keep a proper distance between themselves as they interact. At least, that's how the fable goes. There's no need to get too close. If you do, both sides will end up hurt. The Japanese think of the Chinese as obstinate guys who keep hating us for the war no matter how much time passes. The Chinese think of the Japanese as ungrateful people who don't thank the Chinese enough for postponing the revenge that the Japanese deserve. Oh, I see, yeah. Then, why don't the Japanese keep giving honest apologies? They can just keep saying they regret starting the war. I think that's the right thing to do. I think Japan will continue to do that in the near future and it'll eventually calm down. But that's like watering plants in a desert. It'll never end. It'll be fine for us in the war generation, but future Japanese people born after the war won't understand why they're apologizing for a war they had nothing to do with. They'd be treated more or less like slaves, forced to eternally pay off a debt they carry since the time of their birth. I'm sure even the Chinese wouldn't go that far. The Chinese just want to see a heartfelt apology from the Japanese, I think. They certainly don't want to make them slaves. And I wonder, in the first place, is there some agreed upon line where if the Japanese do this much, the Chinese will forgive them? There's nothing like that. They're only postponing their anger while the Japanese are curled up as a defeated nation. They will never forgive. That's all. And so, it's impossible for the Japanese and Chinese to ever understand each other. QED. Bang. It was the sound of Meishui slamming her hands against the table and rising to her feet. It rang throughout the restaurant, and all the waiters and customers turned to look.
Why are you making so many one-sided assumptions about the Chinese?
Hyugi-chan?
Yeah, there was a war, and a whole lot of people died. I'm sure there's all sorts of grudges from that which can never be wiped away. But we should still be able to understand each other. We've interacted with each other for over 1,000 years, right? We've shared many bits of culture and advanced our own particular cultures, making us like a family that acknowledges one another. It's idiotic that those 1,000 years of interaction and friendship could all be lost because of a single war. Of course, I know that there's a lot of anger and sadness out there that could never be healed. A lot of Chinese and Japanese people were hurt. They bore resentment and sadness. I know they wouldn't even want to look at each other for some time. In that case, we just need to give them time to cool their heads, then start back at square one, looking for a way to hold hands again. So, what gives you the right and qualifications to decide on your own that we'll never understand each other?
You did ask, though, I believe. Okay, I'm pretty sure you asked, though. I need some water after that. Hey. You've been here for a while. I've been mentioning getting speech therapy for like probably a year now. And I was on the waiting list for a long time. And as of this week, I started to learn how to like raise my voice and stuff. And how to basically not breathe while I talk. Which, as it turns out, that's what's going wrong. I just kind of don't breathe when I talk. Which is obviously a problem. So, you know. Oh god, there's a noisy car outside. In the future, I'm gonna get way better at reading these stories. But for now, it's like, it's just 1 week of learning how to use my voice properly, so it still fucks me up. So the only solution for now, water. Water and many, many breaks. Maybe Meishui has the same problem as me. She also stresses how, which I understand. Meishui's shoulders heaved with her breathing, and tears fell from her eyes. A feeling of intense regret rushed through Alan. He hadn't said that because he wanted to make her look like this. She took her wallet out of her handbag, put a new $500 Japanese note on the table, and spun around. However, she tripped on the high heels she still wasn't used to wearing, and crouched down on the ground. Alan rushed towards her and offered a hand, but Meishui slapped it away, sobbing. Alan couldn't do anything but stand there, stunned. Soldier. One of the meeting rooms in the occupying forces headquarters was a mess. Countless American soldiers were carrying in cardboard boxes with papers, meeting desks, and blackboards. Blackboards. A massive map of City 23 was on display. On it, the bases and areas of influence held by all of Primavera's crews were drawn in detail. Next to that, pictures of the faces of Primavera's executives were laid out in a pyramid, with red lines connecting them. I only saw it for a second, but that looked like a really nice fireplace. At the top was Madame Rose Hibara. To her right was Consigliere Richard Mayogi. Below Rose was Grand Boss Cyrus Saimura. As you traveled below him, it radiated out into the bosses of all the crews. In the same way, face shots of the GDS executives were posted separately, with Sun Zilong at the top and the young execs, Major included, beneath him. The once bleak conference room had been reborn as the secret planning room of the anti-organized crime team led by Gabriel. As he looked at all the materials posted on the wall, Butler was amazed at how well researched they were. If you know this much, you hardly need me.
That's not at all the case. It's vital to have information from someone who's acquainted with them, and is even connected with them privately.
Nothing private about it. This is all my official work, Major.
Their personalities, hobbies, patterns of behavior, family relationships, and friend relationships. There's no such thing as too much information. All the paperwork brought into this room is bloodless. You are the one who will finally bring it to life. Almost like a baby swan waking from its sleep.
Okay. Don't tell me you mean to do your job for real.
My job is eradicating organized crime, after all. It's very easy to imagine the feud between Primavera and the GDS influencing the GHQ's rule of Tokyo.
You must be joking. The GDS may be, but Primavera... It's just a slightly disreputable citizens organization led by a dreamer girl who rattles on about ideals.
Well, let's put a stop to all forces between us, seeing as how we both despise them. Know that you will be punished if you break this rule.
Uh-oh. I haven't been punished since I had my ass hit by a teacher's cane in school.
In the first place, I reject the whole concept of the necessary evil. I don't feel any need for organizations such as Mafia to exist.
Not really. They can be pretty useful.
No. And what use can they be?
When your superior's birthday is coming up, you just make a single phone call, and they can get him a birthday cake, a bed, and 3 naked beauties. Butler. Why are you like this, Butler? I'm sure right now it's part of the, like, a front he's putting up, but... yeah.
According to my information, you received 3 women on your last birthday. They were requested to have a bust size over 90.
There he is, Butler.
Or was it 5? Forgive me, my memory on the matter is vague.
Oh, wait, really? Guess I'm no match for you, Major. Apparently, Gabriel had been secretly investigating City 23 for over a year. The GHQ, feeling threatened by the rise of the Caleb family at the time, had probably been secretly investigating City 23 since then. Surely, the subject of their observation had switched to Primavera after them. They had probably investigated on their own, knowing that the City 23 Occupying Forces HQ was deep in bed with Primavera. Butler hadn't wanted to believe it at first, but this man probably did have actual evidence of Butler's corruption. However, he still couldn't level accusations against Butler, because Butler had evidence of corruption by important people in the GHQ. By now, Butler was getting into the habit of showing a negligent attitude, somewhere between exasperation and resignation. Gabriel couldn't kill him, but he was stuck in a cage from which there was no escape. He couldn't play dumb or confuse the issue. He was basically at the point of saying, whatever happens, happens. Butler wasn't the only one in the situation. The high officials in the occupying forces HQ, from the Director General downward, had all been profiting from their positions. All of them were being forced to live with the sensation of this man's cold knife at their necks. By now, no one in this HQ could talk back to Gabriel. He had even announced he would postpone his punishment of them, as long as they didn't get in his way. Even the Director General had to avert his gaze and quickly walk away whenever Gabriel was around. They had petitioned GHQ officials with whom they had corrupt relations for Gabriel's dismissal. They searched for other weaknesses in various limited ways, but all their efforts ended in failure. This man's history was as pure white as fresh morning snow, without any wounds or stains. An excellent record, irreproachable conduct. Some weird vibes. He was an elite among elites who had received several awards. Given that, they wanted to find a weakness among his relatives, but he had no family. His only relatives were on his mother's side. That mother came from a famous family line which included senators and governors. He had no weaknesses. It's true that bad people are good at trapping good people, but there's no way to meddle with a good person so fastidious that he doesn't have a single stain on him. Well, if you're bad enough, you could probably do it, but you'd have to, get your hands dirty. And yeah, they're not going to do that, of course. And honestly, I don't really get good person vibes from Gabriel, let's just say. I'm suspicious. You see, I hate the Mafia. Maybe you should try throwing some darts at those villains on the wall. It seems some in the upper echelons think, like you do, that Mafia can be useful if properly tamed. But to me, the Mafia are an absolute evil, like Satan. I believe they are a wicked group that must not be spoken to, much less negotiated with. I am confident that sending them from this earth to hell is an absolute mission given to me by God. Do you have a grudge against the Mafia or something? Yes, I do. You see, I want to stain these hands red with Mafia blood. Yeah, remember, good person. After all of my accomplishments and efforts until this day have been for the sole purpose of achieving that goal. Nah, come on. That's a spicy joke for such a pretty face. It most certainly is not a joke. I may use my authority and any methods that I please to destroy criminal organizations. I assumed there was a butt coming, but no. Do you realize how hard I've worked to get a chance to hear those words? This guy's serious. Maybe the fastidious nature brought about by his good upbringing had caused him to ruthlessly despise the dark side of human society. This Gabriel Caburaya was serious. He hated the Mafia, and he stated truthfully that he didn't mind staining his hands with blood it meant destroying them. For the first time, this man made Butler shudder. Butler had looked down on him for being, apparently, a well-raised rich kid. That wasn't right at all. This man only seemed to have a well-bred, fastidious beauty because he was so straightforward. Filled with an absolutely straightforward madness that made him want to murder everyone in the criminal underworld. Butler's old instincts were warning him. They warned him against ever dealing with such a man. Nah, that's right. If you weren't my superior officer, I'd definitely run for it.
Phil, I am aware that you are not a good person.
Well, I'm just a money and boob fanatic.
That is good. Now we can finally speak honestly. Villains who do not admit to being villains are ugly. You have finally become beautiful.
So, given that I'm not a good person, what happens next?
As you yourself claim, you are a money worshipper without doubt. You love money.
Isn't that the same as justice in our capitalist USA?
True. Changing policies to maximize gain is the justice of our fatherland. So, I want you to follow the rules of that justice.
Oh?
I want your assistance in my task. Though that will mean betraying the mafias you have colluded with up until now. However, I can give you more profit than they can. Therefore, is it not just that you betray them and obey me?
You're telling me to betray Rose-chan and the others?
Don't tell me you feel love or friendship for her.
Well, you know. Love with a lady of the evening is always an illusion. Is it now? That sounds more sincere than... Well, no. Less sincere than anything you said this conversation. Sorry. And he's been goofing off the whole time.
I can say confidently that aiding me in my task will bring you profit. In the same way, I can say confidently that I can bring you unimaginable losses if you disobey me.
I guess I'd rather not imagine what sort of losses those might be.
Phil, this is an order. Obey me. Though, if you are wise, you want to realize that your wings have been clipped.
In Japan, we call that being a crab on the chopping board. Or was it a Carassius carp? Or a tuna?
I believe it was the koi fish. Not a very elegant metaphor, so I chose to avoid it. Ah, yes. Have you heard what they whisper sometimes in their criminal underworld? That the human world is controlled by 3 forms of power.
I'm pretty sure someone told me somewhere along the line. Influence, wealth, and force, right?
I find it an interesting concept. It does have a sort of logic to it. No one would serve a king without influence. No one would serve a king without wealth. A king without violence would also be served by no one.
Pretty funny that people wouldn't listen to him even if he had wealth and influence.
Might that not lead us to the conclusion that violence alone is enough?
That's right.
This anonymous underworld fable appears, at first glance, to argue that force, or violence, is just one of the elements that compose society. But in actual fact, it includes the implication, known only to them, that violence alone is enough to control the human world.
True. Violence is the strongest. If Truman, Rockefeller, and a punk with a handgun all got into a fight, even a kid could guess who'd win. A president, a petroleum king, and a punk. The victor would be the one with violence on their side. Knowing this, the man with influence and the man with wealth would use their respective privileges to gain the protection of the man with violence. Humanity has given birth to many privileges that can be described numerically and in writing. However, in the end, none of those can stand up to violence. They can only be exchanged for violence by hiring bodyguards and buying weapons, protecting the user by showing off their superior violence to their opponent.
Violence cannot be allowed because it always turns negotiations in their favor. Going back to your example with the president, petroleum king, and punk.
When the punk pulls out his gun and says, "I'm gonna kill you," what will the president and petroleum king do? They would probably negotiate, offering to share the privileges they possess in exchange for the punk's naked violence. The president would probably ask to be spared in exchange for making the punk's dreams come true. The petroleum king would probably ask to be spared in exchange for whatever sum of money the punk wanted. However, this deal would not take place on an even playing field. The punk with a gun possessed the right to accept or deny each proposal, or raise the price, or anything else. If his anger was so great that he didn't even feel like negotiating, the president and the petroleum king would die just the same as anyone else. Excuse me.
That is why violence is anti-civilized, inhumane, and unforgivable. It's simply survival of the fittest. Life at its most bestial. In fact, the power of Satan. It's a grave sin against God and humanity, one which denies the entirety of our cultural history. Wiping such people off the face of the earth is the mission God has given to humanity. Going against this mission is not to be tolerated.
So you answer with more violence? I don't think that makes any sense, but okay. Excuse me.
I'm sure you're already aware of how sinful these criminal organizations are, with violence as their only source of power.
Yes, of course, sir.
Very well.
Oh no. Oh no, Alfred's back. I apologize in advance. I also apologize for the weird little dance I just did. I'm drinking coffee. And it hides my face and then the tracking gets lost and yeah. Don't worry about it.
Hey, Alfred. My bosom buddy.
That what Davis sounded like? I don't think it was, but it is now.
Oh, long time no see. Nice to meet you.
You always bring me such interesting stories. I've been looking for a chance to wring money out of Primavera for so long. I've been planning all this time, hoping to help you, my dear friend, really rake it in. Though Davis had never thought anything of the sort, he spoke shamelessly. Primavera really did a number on me. I lost everything. Started from square one. Got money. And finally, it's time for revenge. Thanks to you, it looks like I'll finally get a chance to teach them a lesson. If you're new here, this man is doing a fake, like he's doing a fake accent, and I'm just doing the fake accent for him. Okay, it's not. I know that nobody actually talks like that. I know this. Accents are also not my thing, so I'm doing my best. Ugh. Just like he had done in the old days, Alfred was now surrounded by henchmen and radiating a boss's aura. Of course, his force wasn't large enough to be called a family, but it was still something Primavera couldn't afford to ignore. Those merchants are all fools. They all fell for my spiel. Hook, line, and sinker. Now, unless they keep me happy, Primavera will never be able to set up their distribution association. By the way, about our respective shares. We did say we'd split the 8 million 40-60, but that didn't cover expenses. Oh, sorry. That's not what I came to talk to you about today. You see, Richard has decided to negotiate with me directly. And it feels like that is going very well. So, we are going to negotiate here now. Please move on to a different hideout, okay? I see. Well, I'd better not show my face around those Primavera guys right now. Get in the car out front. You got it. Well then, I'm counting on you. Once you show up, they'll definitely pay up. Sure, bye-bye for now, my friend. Please do not make me talk like that for... No, I think I'm stuck with this for a while. Well, I wouldn't have minded if you let him join us. I've proven that I possess the article in question, yes? I will now return our merchandise to the vault until our negotiations are complete. I see. So, scum is scum, after all. So that's why no one trusts you. Like you're anyway. I hate to defend Alfred, but Primavera has also been kind of scummy. You guys were planning an assassination like a day ago. Richard and Wayne slowly appeared from the shadows. They had been shown Davis clearly. In that way, Alfred had proven that he possessed Davis. In other words, the negotiation table between them had been set up. Did Davis not pick up on this? Or was he just talking big? Because he's been presented as a really smart guy up until now. You would imagine that he's panicking big time right now. Because he's caught on that he's gonna get sold out, right? I wonder. Richard had brought no one but its driver/guard, Wayne. As skillful as Wayne was, Richard had arrived practically undefended. Alfred approached the table covered with bottles and cigarette butts, then violently knocked everything off it. Then, he patted the tablecloth as though they were hanging out to dry, straightened it, and humbly motioned for them to be seated, like a waiter. Classy.
Of course. That attaché case is filled with money, yes?
Of course. Would you like to check? Wayne, if you would. Wayne set the heavy attaché case he had been holding on the table. When he unlocked and opened it, it became clear to everyone that it was packed with bills, laid out as beautifully as tiles. As beautifully as tiles, that thing I've never heard anyone say. Then, he held it in front of Alfred.
Oh, that's a bit surprising. What is? You're the one who said he wanted money. Well, yes, of course, that. But I'm surprised to find you so obedient. The Primavera I knew was a stronger family, with more backbone. I'm happy, and a little sad. A strange feeling.
A man's heart is a complicated thing. I understand, my friend.
Since when are you friends?
What is going on, Richard? What are you up to?
Remembering how you ran wild in your club really takes me back.
Though Alfred had been wiped out in a flash thanks to Leo Shishigami's actions. Before that hero had appeared, the relationship of threats between the Alfred family and Richard had continued for a long time. They had known each other for a surprisingly long while. At first, Richard had shown his understanding for the need to pay them money, and Alfred had viewed his ongoing relations with Richard as a way to make them pay bodyguard fees. Since each acknowledged the other as negotiation partners, the atmosphere between them when they were alone was surprisingly friendly. In the end, when Madame Rose had made her decision, their relationship had changed. However, up until then, they had met several times for under-the-table negotiations and had an old, inseparable relationship that... Okay. Really? Okay. I'm sorry, I'm just baffled because I was suddenly reminded of some of the stuff that Alfred pulled, and it was, yeah. I don't know, for me that would be a deal breaker. I'd be like, yeah, we can't be friends anymore. Okay. Thank goodness. Of course, that friendliness was only in the mood, and their interactions had never left room for actual friendship to blossom. Yeah, because Alfred's a freak. Sorry. But... But it's true, though.
Seeing that you're willing to hand over so much so easily. This distribution association you're planning.
Getting worse. It's getting worse.
Must be quite some money tree.
Obviously. It means we'll single-handedly control all distribution throughout City 23's Japanese colony. None of the merchants will be able to disobey us. Moreover, we'll be able to rake in money by simply moving things from one place to another. Have you ever heard of such a delicious prospect?
Oh, I'm surprised. It seems you've become quite the bad boy, haven't you?
Wayne was just as surprised as Alfred. Establishing a distribution association was supposed to be a defensive technique to ward off economic invasions against their countrymen.
Yeah, but I mean, Richard's not gonna tell Alfred that, is he? That would be dumb.
Madame Rose had absolutely no intention of using it as a way to squeeze money out of her countrymen. But Wayne didn't let it show on his face. Good, smart. I'm proud of you. He figured it out quickly. This was Richard's style of negotiation. Negotiation means convincing your opponent. In other words, it means stepping into their ring. People who could sympathize. It's a very difficult word. People who could sympathize. Sympathize. Let's try that again. One last attempt. People who could sympathize with Madame Rose's ideals could be convinced simply by hearing about them from Madame Rose herself. However, that would have absolutely no effect on villains who broke out in hives whenever they heard so-called cheap talk. In that case, to convince a villain, you had to step into that villain's ring. Wrapped in the evil aura of City 23's largest mafia's consigliere, Richard calmly spoke his immoral part. That's Richard's son for you. That's why you're our consigliere. And, as Wayne was applauding inside his head, he saw the white cue card hidden behind Richard's hand and smiled wryly. By the way, Alfred, there's one thing you seem to have misunderstood.
What?
We did not bring money here because we wanted to make a deal with Davis.
Bad boy. I see. So, you're offering to pay me more than my share if I hand over Davis?
Practically speaking, Davis was demanding that Primavera pay 8 million Japanese dollars. Alfred's share was 60% of that, 4.8 million Japanese dollars. If they offered Alfred more than that, he would have no reason to support Davis. Of course, Alfred had been fully aware that such a deal might be proposed. He had indeed made tons of money from deals Davis had brought to him. However, he had long since realized that Davis was simply trying to force on him the situation that had gotten out of hand. If he could gain enough money, he'd sell off that swindler in a heartbeat. Alfred had been thinking it was about time to do that. There are 10 million Japanese dollars in this attaché case.
Oh, that's enough super big money to blind the eyes.
What? Super big money? Okay. 4.8 million had now become 10 million. Perfect. They were apparently running out of time. It was probably worth it to them to resolve the problem with the amount of money, instead of letting things get worse. He wanted to wring even more out of them, but that was a good number. It was more than enough for the price of that swindler.
Very good. The deal is complete. Mr. De Gama, you've been sold to Primavera.
Wait. No, Richard. Don't. Make him go away. I'm done with the accent. But no. Please wait. Actually, the amount of money that we are willing to pay for Davis de Gama is only this much. Richard pulled a single stack from the attaché case. Then, he pulled a single bill out of that stack and set it before Alfred. Scum like him is hardly worth any more than this, wouldn't you say?
$1,000. What a waste for a man like that. Feels like I should be offering you some change.
When they saw their boss laughing happily, his underlings started guffawing too. Richard laughed as well, so Wayne decided to match the mood and laugh too. When the laughter died down, Alfred shrugged and patted the stacks of bills in the attaché case.
So, what are the remaining
9,900,999,000 for? It's those dang numbers that got me again.
Don't tell me. You plan to take it home with you.
Alfred, we're through talking about Davis. Now, let's talk about you and me.
Oh?
Both now and in the past, no man in City 23's underworld has been feared as much as you. Even Caleb never dreamed of controlling City 23 until your downfall. Because of that unique style of speech, you haven't been appreciated at your full worth. But you are, without a doubt, the strongest man in City 23.
I'll take it you're excluding Leo Shishigami.
And, strength aside, your courage is remarkable as well. You fear no one, no matter who they be, and you're always willing to go down in flames, taking them with you. How could one describe you, except as the ideal man of the criminal underworld?
I never thought I'd hear compliments coming from you. I see. So, you're asking me to join Primavera? My apologies, but I won't. That's definite. It will not change.
I know. You would never join Primavera. I know how you feel.
Oh?
What did Richard understand about him? Alfred seemed filled with interest. However, Richard didn't answer and slowly lifted his gaze to the ceiling. Come to think of it, among the many creatures of the criminal underworld, has there ever been someone as honest as you? Even before joining Primavera, I came across many people as a moneylender. Please lend me money. I'll definitely pay you back. A big man came crawling to him with tears in his eyes. Richard explained all the conditions and lent him money on an agreement of mutual consent. However, that money never came back. Before the night was out, he had already run away in the night. Before the day was out even. Please lend me money. I'll definitely pay you back. A woman with a child came crawling to him with tears in her eyes. However, she had no means of repaying the loan, and Richard had discovered that she had repeatedly borrowed and run away from other lenders. Richard refused her, recommending that she seek care from public institutions. but there were apparently some circumstances that led to her firmly refusing that. In the end, the woman denounced Richard as a cold-hearted monster and burned herself to death in the middle of the street. Oof. Sorry, just making a quick note of that one. The child she had with her was now missing. If he was still alive, that child might be around 7 by now. He might show up someday with a handgun, thinking of Richard as the man responsible for his mother's death. Such nightmares had tormented Richard at times. Oh. Deciding whether to trust people or not is the most boring gamble. I agree. Do you trust them or not? Worrying about such a thing has no end. Alfred nodded seriously. To Wayne, this was a bit unexpected. So, even Alfred sometimes worried about his trust being betrayed. After that happened multiple times, I found a certain standard by which to measure how trustworthy a person is. Interesting. I'd like to hear it too. It's whether that person is honest to themselves. How straightforward their lifestyle is. In this world, there are too many people who change themselves whenever it's convenient, calling it the trick to living wisely. They cross between benevolence and hypocrisy, depending on their current mood. They are sometimes good people, and sometimes bad people. Too many people can easily switch between the two. If you criticize them for their wrongdoings, they claim to be good people and grow angry. When you ask them to do good, they deny being good people and call themselves realists. And when you try to treat them like realists, then they sob and call you heartless, emotionless. And when you decide to lend them money just this once, oof, they're gone. I hate people like that too. That's why you don't like Rose. You're sure she's just another hypocrite. You're sure it's just cheap talk. You want to expose her for what she is. You want to wrench her true feelings out of her. That's why you want to stand against Primavera. No. It's true I thought that once. But I don't now. I've watched her these 2 years. I was sure she'd be exposed sooner or later. About ready to give up? I surrendered long ago. She's serious. She's serious when she speaks about the future of her countrymen. Roseanne is no more or less than she seems. You told me she really was an angel? I wouldn't doubt it. For the first time, I agree with Mr. Lane. Same here. Right now, I truly can't believe that Madame Rose is a human who craps and vomits like the rest of us. Alfred chuckled. Richard did too. Watching this, Alfred's underlings were a little surprised. Alfred was a man who used even laughter as a weapon of intimidation. The more he laughed, the more terrifying he would look when he yelled at the end. They had seen this happen over and over again. However, right now, Alfred was truly laughing in agreement. without any intention of threatening his opponent. After all, he was speaking with an exec from an opposing family. They were hesitant and surprised at his behavior, which they were seeing for the first time. Good people should act good, and villains should live like villains. I find people who cannot stick to one thing with conviction truly detestable. That's why I cannot hate you. I've even come to think of you as a man worthy of respect.
It's not bad being flattered by the consigliere of the great Primavera family.
Because you are so straightforward, I can understand your heart well. You won't join Primavera because you can't accept a rose. And, for one more reason, you want to fight Leo Shishigami again, don't you? Alfred's confident expression went stiff for a second. However, it didn't seem as though his anger had been aroused. It looked like a kid who had a parent see through a lie of his for the first time. Why else would you have returned to the criminal underworld? You want to cross fists with Leo again, so you won't join his side. That's how you truly feel. It's your straightforward, unadulterated intention, which is worthy of respect. Alfred laughed so hard he fell from his chair. He laughed and laughed. Then, he shook his head several times and slowly shrugged. That's right. He had been waiting for Leo to return, just as much as Rose had. On that day, they had communicated with their bodies as men. His heart, which he had assumed could never be understood by anyone, had certainly been understood by Leo alone. He still hadn't forgotten the speaking of the soul on that day. If you become my friend, I can give you a chance to fight when Leo returns.
Richardson.
He's a flexible man. I'm certain he'll be willing. I should have done this in the beginning, Wayne shrugged. Richard was certain. Alfred's feelings towards Leo were close to longing. Of course, it wasn't like he wanted to go out with Leo and enjoy their reunion. He meant it in the way of lone wolves living in the criminal underworld. He probably felt exactly the same as Wayne. After being seen through so easily, Alfred shrugged, as though giving up.
I can't hide anything from you. That's my friend for you. I see our long acquaintance counts for something. Something, I guess.
I don't know, man. His accent's all over the place, but so would his be, I'm sure. It's a realism, dang it. Alfred, this time, shall we truly become friends? You are a proud man who holds his flag high above his own territory. I could never force you to undergo the humiliation of lowering your flag and raising Primaveras. You should remain Alfred of the Alfred family. You wouldn't be you otherwise. Remain yourself. I want you to remain as the man I respect most, who is straightforward and always stays true to his convictions.
Richard.
Isn't it time our relationship changed from reluctance to open friendship. You don't need to join Primavera. But I want you to become my friend. Primavera will not harm you. You may build up your castle of villains as you please. I want you to use this money to construct your castle as a sign of the friendship between you and me.
In other words, you want me to form an alliance with Primavera?
I told you, Primavera has nothing to do with this. It will be based on our personal, equal feelings of friendship.
Brother, you went from friend to brother real fast there. Incredible. What's going on?
So basically, our boss has been acknowledged by Primavera's consigliere.
That Richard Mayogi is dealing with our boss as an equal brother? I guess it's like mafia brothers. Fair enough.
If this had been a conversation between mere punks, it would be a joke. However, when it was Richard and Alfred, two big names in the criminal underworld, it took on a whole new meaning. Alfred slowly rose and crouched down in front of the pile of bottles and ashtrays he had knocked off the table earlier. Then, he took an unopened wine bottle that was rolling on the floor and set it at the center of the table.
Nah. What have I done? My mind's gone blank at this sudden love call. It makes me think becoming friends with you wouldn't be so bad. However, I would like a little time to settle my heart on this. Sorry. Even I think it's embarrassing that I can't answer you right now.
I don't mind. You are you, but you are also the boss of the Alfred family. You probably need to hear the thoughts of your underlings as well. Richard calmly looked at the men surrounding him. However, their answer was clear. After all, the top family in City 23 had come calling with incredibly favorable conditions. After all, these underworld dropouts who hadn't joined Primavera had been guaranteed equal status. They all had red cheeks like a Cinderella who'd just been proposed to. The next moment, Alfred's lightning-fast knife was out of his pocket. Wayne put his hand on the gun in his pocket at the same instant, but then he stopped. It certainly was a knife, but its blade was folded down. It was a multi-purpose knife. Right now, the corkscrew was extended instead of the knife part. As fast as ever, I see. You haven't lost the touch.
Please wait for my answer on whether I become a friend or not. But right now, I feel like sharing a drink with you.
I would be happy to. You should join us, Wayne.
I'll be in the car. Oh, Mr. Wayne, I didn't know you were old enough to drink. I'm an adult.
This time, everyone roared with laughter, even the underlings. Alfred dexterously removed the cork, then put the bottle to his mouth and drank. Then, after a big gulp, he handed it to Richard.
I never thought a day like this would come. Life is funny.
I agree. Living and building a future is such an amusing thing. Cheers. Alright, I think that's a good stopping point. We will find out what mystery car just stopped and who's in it next time. Yep. That's it. Next time.
Okay.
I can tell the speech therapy is already working a little bit, but the exercises also make my throat hurt a little more 'cause I'm exercising. But I think that went well overall. That was a good episode. I'm happy. Yeah. Good progress too, perhaps. Maybe one day we'll finish this season. Maybe not. Well, no, we will. Because I'll keep going until we're there. But, man, what a long season. I'm gonna look up, once I'm done, I'm gonna look up how long all those seasons are, and I'm gonna compare the word count and such to Umineko, because I'm really, really curious. Because, yeah, this feels not quite, Arc 4, which I think is the longest for Umineko. It doesn't feel that long yet, but it's up there. But that's just not feeling wise, and when I read 4, I would do way longer sessions, so it might be skewed. It could be that this is just kind of short, but because I'm reading for shorter bursts, it feels like it's a lot more. Who knows? Well, I will know in the future. Not right now, though. Because for now, let's make a little save. That deer is staring at me every time I get saved now, and it's kind of scary. Look at it. It's got guns. They gave the deer guns. It's glaring with red eyes, like... Don't like that. I did save, right? I did, yeah. Okay. On that note, all that's left is for me to say thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. I appreciate it. I suddenly forgot how to make sentences happen. Don't ask me why. But yeah, I'll see you next time. And hopefully there won't be any Alfred in the next episode. But there probably will be. There probably will be. And I will suffer. But it's okay. On that note, thank you again. I'm gonna keep saying that if I don't wrap it up quickly. I hope you have a good night, or day, or afternoon, or morning, depending on what it is. A good week, month, a good Alfred-free episode next time. Thanks again for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye.